In the heart of Nigeria, where the Niger and Benue rivers meet, there is a land of hills. Great grey rocks rise out of the earth like the bones of the planet itself, scattered across a landscape of red soil and green farmland. This is Kogi State, and within it lies a people whose story stretches back thousands of years. A people known today as the Ebira. To understand who the Ebira are, we have to go back further than most history books allow. Archaeological evidence suggests that communities have lived in this part of central Nigeria since around 4000 BC. This region sits close to the world of the Nok culture, one of West Africa's earliest known Iron Age civilizations. Not far from present-day Ebira land, iron working sites have been dated to nearly 300 years before the birth of Christ. Long before any written record, before any colonial map, the hills of what we now call Ebira land were already home to people who had mastered fire, iron, and farming. But the Ebira, as a distinct people with a shared language and identity, did not simply spring from the ground. Their own oral traditions tell a story of movement, a long, slow migration carried across many generations. The most widely told version of this story begins far to the northeast. Ebira oral history speaks of ancestors who once lived near the Kwararafa confederacy, a powerful and loosely organized kingdom that once stretched across parts of what is today Taraba State, in the region of the Benue River. Some traditions go even further, describing a memory of movement from lands near the Nile basin, passed down through storytellers long before anyone wrote it on paper. Whether that memory reaches back to the actual Nile Valley or represents a symbolic origin story is something historians still debate. What is far better documented is the more recent chapter, the connection to Kwararafa and to the Jukun people, a powerful group whose confederacy once dominated trade and politics across the Middle Benue region. For reasons historians are still piecing together, likely a combination of conflict, pressure from rival groups, and the constant search for fertile land, the ancestors of the Ebira began to move. They pushed southward and westward, away from Kwararafa, crossing the Benue River. This was not a single dramatic journey. It was a process that unfolded over centuries, wave after wave of families and clans, each pushing a little further than the last, each searching for new ground to farm and new hills to settle. Eventually, these migrating groups reached the Niger-Benue confluence, the very spot where Nigeria's two greatest rivers meet, and from there, they moved further still into the rocky, hilly terrain that would become their permanent home. One of the most detailed oral accounts names a particular leader, a man remembered as Itaazi, as the father figure of one of the major Ebira lineages, the Ebira Tau. According to this tradition, Itaazi's people first traveled alongside the Igala, another major ethnic group of the confluence region, journeying together as far as Ida, a historic town on the eastern bank of the River Niger. But the alliance was not permanent. Not long after reaching Ida, Itaazi's group broke away, crossed the Niger, and settled at a place called Ebira Opete, near what is now Upake, in the Ajaokuta area of Kogi State. This is remembered as the founding settlement. From here, the story becomes personal, almost like the opening chapter of a family saga. Itaazi is said to have had 5 sons, and in the tradition of many migrating peoples across Africa, when a founding generation grows, the sons do not all stay in one place. They spread. Each son moved on to found his own settlement, his own community, carrying the same language, the same customs, but building something new in a new location. Over time, these settlements grew into the major clans that would define Ebira society for centuries to come. It's worth pausing here to appreciate what this migration actually represents. This wasn't a people conquering an empty wilderness. The confluence region of Nigeria was already a crossroads, home to the Igala, the Nupe, later the Hausa, and other groups moving through the same corridor of rivers and trade routes. The Ebira arrived into this world of neighbors, and their identity was shaped as much by those relationships, through trade, through diplomacy, and sometimes through conflict, as it was by their own internal traditions. The hills they eventually settled were not chosen by accident. The dissected, rocky terrain of central Kogi offered something valuable: defensibility. In a region where different groups were competing for land and resources, high ground and natural rock formations gave communities a strategic advantage. It is likely no coincidence that Ebira land today is still marked by these dramatic outcrops of stone, the same hills that once sheltered its earliest settlers. By the time this migration had run its course, the people who would become known as the Ebira, sometimes recorded in old colonial documents as Ibira or Ibira, had settled firmly into what is today the Central Senatorial District of Kogi State. Their heartland centered on the area that would grow into the town of Okene, which remains the cultural capital of Ebira land to this day. They spoke a language belonging to the Nupoid branch of the Niger-Congo family, closely related to Nupe, and distinct from the languages of their Igala and Yoruba neighbors nearby. And crucially, they did not arrive as a single unified kingdom with one king at the top. What they built instead in these hills and valleys was something far more decentralized, a society organized not around the throne, but around the clan. That structure, how a scattered people organized themselves without an emperor, without a single capital, and yet still built one of the most resilient identities in central Nigeria, is where our story picks up next. In part 2, we go inside the clans themselves. We meet the 5 founding lineages that shaped early Ebira society, the priest chiefs who governed them, and the extraordinary moment under colonial pressure when a fiercely independent, clan-based people was persuaded to unite under a single crown, the Ohinoi of Ebira land.